Alright, welcome to another video, and before we get started I'd like to take a quick minute to thank all the Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members whose names you see scrolling across the screen right now. They make this financially possible, and without you, I probably wouldn't be here making videos, so thank you. Alright, so in today's video we're going to be taking a look at a host of new hardware from Radiomaster. This is all for Express ELRS, and what sets this apart from the Ranger series, this is the Bandit series by the way, what sets this apart mainly is the fact that it's 900 megahertz gear, and depending on where you're at and what your local regulations are, it can be run on either 915 or 868 megahertz. And there's also a couple of little changes, most notably in the micro and the nano modules over here. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. First off, this is my daily driver, my Radiomaster TX16S. And I've been flying recently with the 2.4 gigahertz Ranger module. So I'll go ahead and pull that one out. And we're going to sit it kind of over here to the side, because we're going to first take a look at the full-size Bandit module. And this one is basically the same thing as the Ranger, but as you can see there, it's called the Bandit now. And you notice the color is slightly different. It's kind of gray gunmetal color versus the black for the 2.4 gigahertz Ranger. But this is basically the same flagship module as the large Ranger. And as usual, it comes with the adapters for both the JR style radios as well as the nano radios. And you can see I have the JR adapter mounted on my Ranger so that it fits my TX16S. But you can use this on either type of radio. And there's also a crossfire input cable down here, so that you can mount this to different radios that might not have one of these bays. You can mount this to like a Futaba radio, for example, and there's a little included cable which you can find right here to get crossfire output from supported radios, as well as the included Allen key and the screws for mounting these adapters to the module. You see there's a couple of little threaded holes, a few of them back there. And we can actually open this up, just kind of quickly demonstrate that. So you have a little 8-pin connector. You have 8 pins showing on there, and an 8-pin connector right there that it mounts into. And you'll notice you'll have 2 holes up here and 1 here, which correspond to the 3 holes on there. So you just carefully align those pins. Kind of having to do this out of frame, so make sure it gets lined up right and we don't bend any pins. But you'll basically just kind of plug that adapter in and mount the 3 screws out of the bag there, and it'll plug right into your radio, just like I just showed you with the Ranger. And the same thing with the little nano adapter. It'll just attach on there and plug into a radio that uses that style adapter instead. So that's kind of a quick physical look at it. You also do get, if you remove that foam there, you can see you also get the T-style antenna, which is kind of an omnidirectional center fed dipole antenna, as well as a Moxon style antenna. Now this is new for Radiomaster. Well, both of these are new from Radiomaster, being that they're on the 915 or 868 megahertz frequency. But this is basically the same as the little 2.4 gigahertz Moxon antenna that I've been running on my Ranger module, which is kind of semi-directional. It's directional. It's just not a real narrow beam. I think there's like only 5 dB gain, and you just kind of point this in the general direction that you're going to fly in, and you'll have a stronger signal than using the unidirectional antenna or omnidirectional antenna. That would be more useful for flying closer range and all around in all directions. So you do get both antennas included with the full-size, the flagship Bandit module. So let's kind of set that one in the background. And we'll take a quick look at, let's look at the Nano first. And I do want to point out, I did unbox some of these already. I've been playing around with them a little bit recently. But you see with the Nano module, one additional change they've made besides changing the frequency is they've added the little OLED display and the 5-way joystick to both the Nano and the Micro. We'll go ahead and unbox the Micro at the same time. And both of these does include the T-style antenna, the dipole omnidirectional antennas, but you do not get the Moxon antenna included with either one of these modules. but they are both available separately. You can purchase the Moxon antenna or the omnidirectional antenna separately. So if you want to purchase one of these and then pick up the Moxon, you can do that as well. But just like the Bandit Nano, the Bandit Micro adds the OLED display and the little 5-way joystick. And obviously the difference in these is one fits the Nano style radios and the Nano module bay, and the other one plugs into a JR style radio. So if we grab my TX16S, and again that's just standard TX16S with the JR style bay there, it will plug right in, make sure those pins are aligned, and it'll click into place like so. And you still have the OLED display, much like the full-size Ranger, or get it out of the box over here, the Bandit. You still have the OLED display. You do lack the two configurable buttons that the Bandit and the Ranger have. So this, you do have a little bit extras with this one. But you do still have that display. So if you wanted to use this on something like a Tyrannus or something like that, that you don't have the color display, I find it a little bit easier to use the Lua script to manipulate settings in the modules. With the full-size Ranger on my TX16S, I tend to use the Lua script more so than the joystick and the OLED screen on the back there. But the screen is nice for information while you're running the module. But as far as changing settings and things like that, I tend to prefer doing it in the Lua script. But it is nice to have the option to do it on the module, especially on the radios with the black and white screens. I find them a little bit easier to just use the settings on the module. Now the only radio I have on hand is this little jumper radio that has a Nano module, but I'll go ahead and show you. You can click that into place just to show you how it fits. Just snaps on and slides down like so. And obviously you need to mount an antenna before you power it up. So let me hurry up and do that. Just fold that one out of the way. So that's going to be how it mounts to a little small gamer style radios like that. And I should point out that both of these modules, as well as the big one, they all three do 1 watt output, so you're not really giving up much there. I would consider the Nano and the Micro both full featured modules, but I can go ahead and power it up. I have an HTX on this little radio. I believe I set it up to use Crossfire, or maybe I didn't. Actually, I did. So yeah, you can see there we have it mounted up. And you can manipulate the settings using the joystick, just like the full-size modules. And I do want to point out, that reminds me of the little icon there. They did retain the 2.4 gigahertz, I guess, chipset in there or whatever for Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. You do have Bluetooth and Wi-Fi on all of these modules, which is nice to see. You can see there's your Wi-Fi admin settings and VTX admin. That's something I don't use. I mean, none of my video transmitters support the VTX backpack function stuff that's built into ELRS. But yeah, like I said, you basically have full control right here without using the Lua script. Because on the little small screens on here, I tend to find it a little bit more difficult to navigate these little small screens. And in fact, I don't even have the Express LRS Lua script on this radio. I've never copied it to the SD card, but I still have full functionality using the little OLED screen and the joystick. So we'll go ahead and power that one off. And we'll set this kind of radio back aside here. The last thing we want to take a look at is the two receivers that they did include with this. These are the two receivers that are currently available, the BR1 and the BR3, which I assume is Bandit Receiver 1 and Bandit Receiver 3. And the one is just a single antenna receiver, and this is everything that's included in the packaging. Let me actually slide this receiver out of the way. You see you have a few lengths of heat shrink tubing that you can shrink around the receiver after you have everything mounted and soldered up, just to protect it. The receiver itself is basically your run-of-the-mill Express ELRS receiver, and you have some nice little solder pads, top and bottom, and notches on the edge of the board. Should make soldering fairly easy. And it comes with this little whisker style antenna, as well as a center fed dipole, kind of a semi-rigid. These are flexible and springy, and it's going to be a little bit more durable than this style antenna. And for mounting on fixed wings and things like that, I much prefer these. Tend to get a little bit better signal with them both being rigid and kind of a fixed mount it. And you get a little length of silicone wiring for soldering up, or you can kind of use your own harness if you choose to do that, as well as a quick little spec sheet, which the BR1 receiver, I'd like to point out, does have 50 milliwatt telemetry output, which is pretty standard for Express ELRS stuff, and kind of little quick binding instructions and things like that. And we'll compare that to the BR3 receiver. This one does not come with the little whisker antennas, but it does come with the same little quick spec sheet and 3 pieces of heat shrink tubing, same length of silicone cable. And as far as the receivers, you do have 2 of the semi-rigid dipole antennas, because this is an antenna diversity receiver, and it's pretty much the same layout. It's a little bit physically larger, but not much. Kind of compare the two there, kind of get a visual representation of the size differences in them. It's not a lot of difference there, but this one, another small change I want to point out, a little difference. This one has a little membrane button for the boot button, which, being Express ELRS, you shouldn't really never need the boot button unless something goes wrong. It's kind of, you get a bad flash or something, it's kind of hard to brick these, but you might get them in an unresponsive state. You might have to use a hardware boot button to get it into bootloader mode so you can reflash the firmware. But this one does have an actual little clicky little hardware button, which is, I don't know, just a little difference I noticed. I don't really know which is better. You're not going to have to rely on either one very often, but they'll probably both do the job if you need it. Personally, I kind of like the one on this one. But anyway, that's kind of the only differences besides the specs. If we look at the BR3 antenna diversity receiver, actually does have 500 milliwatts output for telemetry. And what that means is, even if you're not using telemetry for as far as getting information back to the ground that you're using, like in your radio with the Lua telemetry scripts for iNav or Dupuy or something like that, the system still relies on a 2A radio link so that the receiver can kind of talk back to the transmitter and let the transmitter know what the signal looks like on the receiving end. And the transmitter can then bump the power up and down with, you're using a dynamic power, obviously. So having that 500 milliwatts is going to be able to send that information back down to your transmitter module so that you can better negotiate a link without wasting battery power on the transmitter on the ground side. So it's only going to bump the power up to what it needs to get a good reliable signal out. So just a quick recap. The micro and the nano modules, they are full featured, apart from a couple of extras that you have with the kind of flagship module there. They all 3 do 1 watt output. I kind of like the OLED screens added on these smaller modules, especially. Kind of makes them a lot more useful, in my opinion, without having to navigate those tiny little radios or displays on some radios. Obviously the flagship module is going to give you a little bit better cooling with the large CNC aluminum case. It's more durable, it looks nicer. There's also the gyro in here, accelerometer, so that you can kind of enable the screen and joystick when the radio is flipped over. If you flip it back over, it'll cut the screen off, kind of little extras like that. One thing I noticed down here, there's another connector down here, RT, on the bottom. Kind of get it where you can see that. Next to this CRSF input pin. Not sure what that is. I haven't seen the full manuals yet for some of this stuff. I'm recording this all pre-release. But I'm kind of interested in finding out what that RT connector is for. It may actually offer something later that these don't do, or it may already be built in it. I haven't found that functionality yet. But I have booted these up, and I've used this one and bound it up to another old Express LRS receiver that I had, an old flashed R9 that I played around with a little bit before. They work fine. There's no firmware targets available yet in the ELRS configurator, but these do ship with the latest. I forget what it is, like 3.3.1 or something. Don't quote me on that. Whatever the current stable release is what arrived on these. I believe it's 3.3.1, but I could be wrong about that. But I do expect to see the firmware targets available once these actually release by the time this video is actually uploaded and made public. But for the time being, that's what we have. And another thing you probably already noticed that I didn't really point it out though, but they all three do have the XT30 power input as well as USB-C connectors. These are kind of recessed down in here on the micro module, and they're here on the nano, and they're on the bottom of the flagship module. So that's all the stuff that I would like to thank Radiomaster for sending me. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to show you any flying with this today because I've been sick for like a week. About the time this arrived, I've pretty much stayed in the house. I was almost bedridden for a week. I was pretty sick. Thankfully, I'm over that now. And now the weather is kind of not really cooperating. It's going to be one day next week before I get to fly again, assuming everything else works according to the weather format or the weather forecast. But yeah, I'm probably going to mount the BR1 receiver with its T-style antenna. I'll probably mount this combo in the Swordfish, I guess. And I want to save this diversity receiver, antenna diversity with a higher output. I want to save that one for another project that will better utilize it. But I think we'll probably mount the single antenna receiver in the Swordfish. It'll be a direct swap for the Crossfire receiver that's in there, and then we'll fly it. And I fully expect this all to work without issue, based on what I've seen with Express LRS in the past. But yeah, I'm just super stoked to see 900 megahertz gear from Radiomaster. You get the Radiomaster assortment and versatility, and as far as what module you want to run and receiver you want to run, and I do fully expect to see some more receivers come out in the future as well. But you get the Radiomaster reliability and hardware quality paired with the Express LRS features. Kind of the same thing that makes the 2.4 Ranger series of stuff work out so well. But now we have the option for 900 megahertz. So this is going on to be a 17-18 minute video now of me just unboxing this stuff and rambling on about it. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this one now, and stay tuned because in the near future, like I said, we will get this mounted into an airplane, most likely the Swordfish unless something changes, and get some flying on it. And I guess just show it in action. But it's basically Express LRS that you know, with the Radiomaster hardware quality, like I said, and that dependability and reliability. So really happy to see that. Really thankful for Radiomaster for sending me this, and of course to you all for watching it. And any questions, comments, put them below the video and I'll answer them if I'm able. And if not, I'll try to go and learn, and then maybe we can learn something together. But anyway, I'll see you in the next videos when we actually put this stuff to use here pretty soon. So thank you for watching this one, and I will see you all then.